Hello, everyone, and welcome to our conversation today. It's Mary Maguire here, and I'm the host of the Edge webinar series, where we bring interesting people together to have conversations around work, around organisations, around women, around leadership, and how all these themes intersect. Today, we're going to talk about The Geek's Guide to Work, which is a specific book, and we're going to meet with the author, Julia, around how do we help leaders who are technically brilliant. They have the technical skills and they maybe work in a technology or a technical environment, but maybe struggle to make that bridge towards building the relationships with the people that they manage and that they lead. It's a big area. We know it covers a lot of issues for many organisations where you need both the discipline and also the leadership skills, but it's difficult to get the two in balance. So that was the motivation behind this book, and we're going to hear some more now. So Julia Sullivan, as I said, is the author of the book The Geek's Guide to Work. And I know Julia because we were on the same book writing program last year. So when I was writing my book, The Female Edge, Julia was doing exactly the same process in writing her book as well. So we met through that. We used the same publisher, and we're both very excited to find that we're finalists in the Business Book Awards for this year as well. So we have lots of things in common at the moment, and it's been great to see how Julia's book has come to the fore as well as mine. So it was obvious that I wanted to bring Julia on board and have a conversation with her and highlight the brilliant work she does. So welcome, Julia, to today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're so welcome. And let's start by hearing a bit more about you. Tell us about your background and what you do and where you are.
Well, exactly 30 years, well, a little bit more than 30 years ago, I came to Holland. I just graduated. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Very quickly after arriving in Holland, I met my husband. So it became clear I was going to stay here. And within a year, because I came as a journalist, basically looked for a different job, I found myself working for a subsidiary of Levi Strauss, their chinos brand, which was Dockers. Wow. And I was working in their European headquarters. And there was this situation that I really had a dream job. It was an amazing company. I had great colleagues, a very nice job, these amazing design offices. It was the early 90s, so it was booming. You know, money was no issue. Every month we had a marketing meeting in a different European capital. So I was in this dream job. And on the outside, you could have said, well, you know, she's very, very lucky. And I was. But on the inside, I was actually really struggling. And in retrospect, I was struggling really with the five, the five elements I handle in the book. The first one being honesty, that I don't know, there were certain questions I just didn't dare to ask. I was keeping quite a lot to myself. For example, you know, when I first started there, I was asked to do work I'd never ever done before, like collating market research information in Excel. It was totally new for me. And in the first 2 weeks, I was happy with asking questions about it. But after 2 weeks, I had this idea that, you know, I should be able to do it by now. So I didn't actually, I didn't dare to ask certain questions I had. Now, to cut a long story short, I ended up actually really, really struggling and feeling really quite stressed. And basically the outshot of this was I felt really so kind of stressed, close to burnout. I was looking for help, and I ended up doing a training 5 days, which to my surprise showed me that actually there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. I just had my idea of leadership and what I should, what I ought to know was actually wrong. A year after that, I decided I wanted to change career, and 2001, I gave my first training, and 2006, I was qualified to give that very training. And I've been doing that, among other things, since then.
And what specifically is the training? How would you describe that?
Well, it's really a personal journey into, I mean, the way it works is kind of, I often joke with people about it, it's people come to do that training to be happier and more successful. And they kind of think that we're going to tell them how to do it, but we don't. What actually happens is that they go on this, basically they learn to sharpen their thinking, and actually to really change the way they think about themselves through all kinds of experiences and lectures and more experiences. It's extremely experiential. So they really discover things about that were holding them back. So it's not so much that they learn stuff, but they unlearn what they've been doing that had been holding them back. And actually, everything I do is kind of different variations on that.
Yeah, and would these be things that I would often term self-limiting beliefs? So the self-talk or the beliefs we hold about ourselves, which hold us back, in the way that you described the beliefs you held, which was, I can't ask questions and I should know this by now.
Well, yes, absolutely. But also the way that influences our behavior. For example, trying to prove I'm smart in many different ways, either by being, always having to know the answer, by being sophisticated, or by maybe being a little bit pushy, or maybe the other way around, like postponing things and endlessly planning out of fear of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so basically people kind of discover also areas that they had no clue that it was showing up this way. They start to find out, oh, I'm doing it there, I'm doing it there, I'm doing it there. And then also have the opportunity basically to test doing it a different way.
Sounds fabulous. So I think it's a good route into the book that you've written. But even before we get into the book itself and what it does, what motivated you to write the book? Because that's a big undertaking. Yeah. You're very successful, I know, as a trainer, and go into organizations and help them with these issues. So what was the motivation behind the book?
Well, first of all, yes, I'm thinking back to a year ago, Mary. Gosh, that really was a hard slog, wasn't it? So, yeah, good question. Well, it was actually to close a gap, and it's funny that you've kind of got that in your tagline as well. But a gap between the people who've done these programs and the people who haven't. You see, when people come into a program like this, the journey they go through it ends up very, very personal. So the first couple of days, they're investigating stuff. And at a certain point, they find out, or they decide, a lot of them choose that, okay, well, the best way for me to move forward is to share some of the things that I've maybe never, ever shared with anyone before. Maybe stuff that they've completely forgotten about that they share. So it becomes a very, very exciting, but also vulnerable journey. And we respect that by never sharing anything that happens in the training, because that's the only way we can create the safety for this to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the people who do the program come out like, oh my goodness. Suddenly, once the weight of lots of stuff has kind of fallen off their shoulders, and I'm not talking about damaged people, I'm talking about people who are very, very successful.
Absolutely.
Who then have suddenly shared things that were holding them back. And so they have these kind of epiphanies, and they, at the end of the training, suddenly the world looks different for them. The world is a kind of place that they feel excited about. So everything looks different. And, it's for many people a seriously life-changing experience. But unless you've been there, you can't begin to understand it. so really, that was my motivation to write the book, to try and close that gap, because people just can't imagine, you know, what happens. They can't imagine that you can you can take, you know, you can achieve so much in just 5 days. So yeah, in gosh, how many pages in this book? Gosh, 178 pages. I still can't really convey it, but I've done my best.
Yeah. So a big part of your motivation was that you've experienced the transformational effects of the training, and knowing that you can't get everyone through the training, but there's lots of people out there who need to learn these skills and have these experiences. You wanted to get that in the book so people could at least access it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people kind of think, when they think of a training, they think, you know, okay, well, we're going to get some slides and we're going to do some role play and we're going to go into breakout groups and then we're going to come back again and we're going to get lots of theory. And that's exactly what does not happen.
Yeah.
You know, okay, so I give people tools, but it's mostly about building the attitude in order to really trust yourself in applying the tools.
Yeah. And I think that's very, it's very strong in the way that I work with people as well, is that I always say to people, change never happens through ideas, change never happens through theories, change happens through action. And when we choose to take an action and then reflect on that and learn from it, that's when change happens, which is why obviously your training is so experiential based.
Absolutely. Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so that's great. So let's go into the book itself, your book, which has been shortlisted in recognition of the great work and how well written it is. If people were looking for some guidance around things, what does the Geek's Guide to Work? Well, actually, even before that, why did you call it the Geek's Guide to Work? I think it's a great title, but why did you come up with that?
Well, when I started writing, I suddenly saw something I'd never seen before, which is that, it's amazing, I didn't realize it, was that around a third of all my clients work in tech. Now, I hadn't realized that because I also trained people in schools, hospitals, all kinds of different organizations. But I realized, you know, the largest group came from tech, and they say it's good to niche. So I thought, I will hone in on this area. And then we were playing around with titles, and then, you know, the word geeks came up, and we thought, okay, well, why not? So but what it's not telling geeks how to be geeks, because they know better. And by the way, you know, it's not meant as an insult at all. You know, what I mean with geeks, people who are like really, you know, really into their work. And so I definitely consider myself a geek in my own area. And it's not a guide to work in the sense of how to be a geek. It's a guide to work in the sense of how to handle the human part. Because a lot of people I've worked with in tech are extremely bright, and they've got to their position by being that bright. And of course, it's an area, it's a branch, it's an industry which is changing incredibly fast. So the pressure on people to keep up with all the changes is very, very high. But this pressure to show you're intelligent and to show that you're on top of things, it creates kind of pressure on the human side. So it can be detrimental to the relationship you have with yourself and with other people.
Yeah.
So what I've done in Geeks, I present this model which I developed, which maybe we can show in the slide, of basically 5 elements that are critical to creating a healthy culture. Whether you're working with just one person or in a whole organization. So these 5 elements of honesty, awareness, clarity, courage, and authenticity, it's critical that they're there. And you know, on first sight, you think, you know, everyone would probably agree with most of these, and they look incredibly simple. But this is the tricky thing. Actually, in practice, they're not. If we zoom into honesty, for example, you know, I certainly don't need to tell you, but I don't need to tell most people that, if there is a lack of honesty in a team, or even just, two partners working together, then what happens is that feedback is not given, or not fully given, which means that frustrations start to build up very, very quickly. And meanwhile, very simply, things just don't get corrected that should be corrected. But it's very easy to talk about. In practice, people find honesty pretty difficult to work with.
Yeah.
And you'll find that people tend to find, unconsciously, they will avoid being honest, either by being very, very polite, or by postponing conversations, or by getting defensive when other people are honest to them. So the difference between agreeing that honesty is needed, if there's a quantum leap between that and actually making sure that it happens.
Yeah.
So actually being honest requires quite a lot of courage. Now, I'm not going to handle all of them. Okay, so awareness is very, very, very simply, awareness is basically taking your own ideas and concepts and plans with a pinch of salt, and making them less important than the reality that there is there. People tend to be very, very, hang on to their concepts and their ideas very, very strongly. We could go into this for hours, but I'm not going to go. Clarity. What I mean with clarity is the ability to distinguish between physical facts and thoughts and feelings. Now, if we're not able to do that, what happens is we experience all kinds of feelings, whether it's excitement, or whether it's stress, or whether it's worry. Now, if you're not able to identify the thought behind the stress, and if you're not able to check the thought against the facts, then that stress is going to get the better of you.
Yeah.
And it's going to determine the quality of your life in that hour or day. So, and actually, a lot of people kind of think this is just how life is. That we're led by our feelings, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot you can do about it. Actually, very, very simply.
I mean, I know we're going to go for the others, but that whole thing around separating our thoughts from reality is something that is so important for us to get real clarity about a situation, but it's very difficult for us to do, because we often don't observe our thoughts, do we? We often just allow them to run on autopilot, and we're running with an outmoded program, a program with faulty code, a program that's not appropriate for the situation we're in, and we don't even realize it. So, that in itself is a huge step forward for people.
Absolutely. But what a lot of people tend to do is kind of make it quite complicated, like observe your thoughts. But it can be done much more simply.
Yeah.
If we make the difference between a physical fact, like it's a fact that I clap my hands.
Yeah.
There's no disagreement between us because you see it, you hear it.
Yeah.
You have all kinds of thoughts about it. Once you separate the opinion you have about it and simply that's a fact, then things become very simple, and you can do that everywhere.
Yeah.
And it prevents in teams, it prevents people kind of getting bogged down in their opinions. And get back to, okay, what's the physical fact?
Yeah. I mean, that in itself could solve so many issues, but I don't want to stop you because you've got a couple more here. But I just, there's really, really powerful points coming through.
Without going into too deeply, courage is simple. What courage is about, it's about this pretense that most of us, actually 99.99% of everyone, is busy with a kind of a pretense, trying to be the person I think I should be.
Yeah.
Which in the workplace is often reinforced because people have expectations of us. So we think we should be on top of things. We think we should know it all. We think we should be. So all these I should Now, this pretense is not only tiring, actually exhausting, but it also creates a distance with the people we're working with, and it can lead us to behave in certain ways that are frankly annoying to the people who are around you. They come across as like, I don't know, arrogant, or the other way around, like submissive. So courage is simply the willingness to drop that pretense and be real. Really, to be real, or what Brene Brown would say is to be vulnerable. Yeah. Instead of pretending. Now, authenticity, these days you get a lot of people saying, I just want to be myself. Let's all just be ourselves. But that's actually not enough, because what people then forget is there are all kinds of forces going on in us. Just for example, fear or manipulative thoughts and feelings that get us to behave in ways that we later regret, or react in defensive ways, or so that all this stuff is going on in us. So if you just say, I'm just going to be myself, actually you just kind of surrender to all these negative forces. So authenticity is not about being yourself. It's about outthinking your ego, basically. It's about outthinking your manipulative thoughts and feelings, so that you are real in the sense of you're bigger than your manipulative mind.
Wow, I love that. I'm just going to play that back to you, because that's like amazing. Is authenticity is about outthinking our ego mind.
Yes, which sounds complicated, but it's actually very, very simple. It doesn't. It takes a few more. It doesn't. Can you do it in an hour? No, but you can definitely do it in several days. Yeah,
with practice, and I think that the other thing about that, I just wanted to come back to you about authenticity, because I think you made some really strong points there. But one of the things I think people either struggle with, or I see them behave from a point of maybe inappropriate, unprofessional, or just downright bad behaviour, is they say, well, I'm being authentic, I'm just being my real self here. But exactly as you've described it, is no, they're being their worst self here, the self that is more completely reactive without much thinking going on. And what you're saying is, be yourself, but be yourself that's considered, that is thinking, that is going beyond the initial emotional or trigger that you might see.
Well, yes.
Yeah, so that is fabulous. I mean, I don't think you realise how profound that is, but that's pretty profound.
It is profound. It is definitely profound. So it's being loyal to your intention, rather than loyal to your gut reactions. Because if we think about it in day-to-day life, with kids, there will be times that, children, your own children, will bring out the worst in you. You get irritated or angry, or, are you being yourself? Yes, you are being yourself, but are you being authentic? Well, no, because you're not being loyal to your intentions.
To the the greater self, if you like, or higher self, the one that would actually be more aware of what's going on, which is obviously what you talked about there. I mean, you can see how these build on each other but feed each other as well, because to get to authenticity you need honesty and you need courage, to move into the authenticity, and through that you get to that real clarity of awareness of you and your situation, and clarity in terms of how you express yourself. So you can see how they all feed into each other.
I actually had to write the book twice to get to this, Mary.
This
time last year I had the first version of the book written and it was rubbish, so it went in the bin. So it was only the second version that I came up with this model.
So I'm just, I mean, absolutely, but I love it. I love the model. I love the way that you've explained it. I mean, and I had tingles at times as you explained it, because it's like, yeah, this is pretty, you know, life altering stuff. You know, when people get this, when they understand it, when they can act on it, when they can build these skills and the, you know, the muscles, the intentional muscles and the awareness muscles that come with it, that starts to really alter the whole way that people relate to others, how they're seen by others. So yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, it is. It really is. Which I mean, I just came out of a training last Sunday, and I mean, it is just amazing, actually. You know, the shifts people make, and it's not that I've taught them; they've discovered and looked and reflected and tried, and then suddenly, you know, so it really is intrinsic, and it's, you know, it's part of them. Rather than it being some, you know, some theory that they've remembered. So yeah, it really is life-changing. You know, I have this conviction, which, you know, some people call me naive, but I really believe that organizations can be a force for good. Once they allow, you know, their people to really start developing themselves and to show up as authentic human beings, which means that so much more of the potential gets used because people dare to show up, which is good for the company, and things get corrected much faster. But it also means that people are much more true to their own intentions.
Yeah.
And that they really, you know, they stick their neck out for things they believe in. And this is one of the things, you know, that I see time and time again in companies, that people end up kind of, you know, just tolerating situations that they don't think are okay just because they don't dare to speak up.
Yeah.
Or just kind of going through the motions because of, you know, because they've tried a few times and it hasn't worked before. So they kind of give up. And this is how so much human potential starts getting lost.
Yeah.
Because people just kind of give up. So yeah, I still believe that developing people is, on the one hand, great for the organization, but also is actually great for society because people start to show up for what they believe in.
Yeah. Completely. I mean, I think you get and if people call you naive for that view, then I'm with you completely, 100%. I believe that organizations can be a powerful force for good for society if they really connect to values which are about something greater than themselves, their mission and their profit, but something which is enhancing to society. And, you know, while we haven't got as many of them as we'd like doing that, I think more and more organizations are starting to see that.
Yeah. And it is actually easier than they think, because it doesn't have to be linked to, you know, amazing philanthropic projects. But the moment they become like, you know, let's say learning grounds for authenticity for the people who work for them, then the initiative will start to come from their co-workers.
Yeah.
Whether it's during work time or outside work time. Then you've got all this group of people, and you know, human beings are so incredibly, you know, there's so much potential in a human being, and you know, we only tap into a small part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely. So before we leave everyone today, what would be one takeaway or one action that people could take after listening to the hacker model, you know, all of the human potential that's behind this change? What's one thing that they maybe could take away and do?
I had two and I couldn't choose, so I'm going to give two, if that's okay.
Give two, even better value.
Yeah. Well, the first one is to always check your thoughts against physical reality. You know, so if your thought is, you know, I'm not good at this, for example, to really check the facts. You know, has any disaster happened? Have I been sacked? Has anyone told me that I'm not good enough at this? So always check from the outside in to check whether your thoughts are actually true. And the second one is that a lot of people have learned that to learn from mistakes, like to be very, very, to be very alert to any mistakes they make in order to correct them, in order to learn.
Yeah.
But they forget to look at the progress they're making and learning from the way they created that progress. So my tip is to give at least as much attention, preferably more attention to the progress you're making and how you're making that progress, and learn from that. At least as much as learning from your mistakes, because you'll find it'll support your motivation, and it'll support your self-trust, because only learning from your mistakes is likely to undermine your self-trust, because you'll start beating yourself up without realizing it.
Yeah, I love that. So in summary, the first tip is for people to check the thoughts with the physical facts. So go from the outside in terms of what is actually happening, what can I see, what is the evidence of what's happening, before I go to the thoughts and believe them. Yeah. And then the second one is go from a place of understanding how you're making progress right now with something, as opposed to defaulting to where mistakes have been made and learning from them, which is about building confidence rather than being based on fear. I would summarize in there as well. Yeah, really.
And the more you build your confidence, the more you dare. And then things become more exciting.
Yeah. Two brilliant tips. Thank you so much for that. So in summary for today, in terms of if people want to get in touch with you, I've put your details in here. So the email is info@juliasullivan.nl, because you're based in the Netherlands, which is great. Your website is there as well, juliasullivan.nl, and then your LinkedIn profile, if people want to connect with you, if they want to continue the conversation, they'll find you at Julia Sullivan, but the whole HTTPS link is there, because I know how fickle LinkedIn can be when you do a search. And most of you know me, but I'll remind you again that you can get in touch with me at Mary Agents to Change, and my LinkedIn profile is Mary Maguire, and I'm the one based in the UK, because there's a few that are songwriters and things like that. So we hope you found this useful. If you're listening to this on playback and you have some comments or thoughts, some reactions, please just pop them in the comments, because we look at this after the effect. So it's still really useful to hear from you and to see how it's resonated with you. And we'll look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Thank you, Julia, for a fantastic and really insightful session.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.